I welcome you to our webinar today, Completing the EAM Puzzle, Putting All the Pieces Together. Today's speaker is Mike Jordan. Mike is the Global Director of EAM at Utopia. He's a professional engineer with more than 30 years of experience in strategy development, systems engineering, and program management associated with automation systems in asset-intensive industries. And through all of this extensive experience with industry-leading engineering, procurement, and construction companies, Mike's developed an interesting perspective on the challenges faced by information and communication technology in large-scale capital projects. All that to say that Mike has been in your shoes, has a wealth of experience in enterprise asset management, and I look forward to hearing what he has to say for us today. So with that, Mike, I'll hand things over to you.
This is Mike Jordan with Utopia. Well, I appreciate your time today. We'd like to spend a bit of time to talk through some of the challenges that Utopia finds as we engage with large asset-intensive industries working to pull their data together for asset management purposes. I'll tell you just a bit about Utopia. Utopia is a 500-person company founded in 2003 that works globally, particularly on challenges of data. Within my domain, within my space, it's all focused particularly on asset data, but we're aligned very closely with SAP and work largely in asset-intensive industries such as oil and gas, utilities, chemicals, manufacturing, and focus particularly on the data challenges and helping those customers get the data right in their EAM environment and keep it right. We've worked with a variety of customers in that space. Here are a few of examples, and I'll talk to some of the references with these customers as we go through the presentation. One thing we find as we engage with customers in this space is as they're working to get accurate data into their EAM environment in order to improve the operational readiness of their maintenance and MRO supply chain systems, is quite often they're in better shape than they might think they are. They have more information and they have more accurate information than perhaps they believe they do, but quite often it's just not in the spot where they thought it was. So we take a very holistic approach to this challenge of asset data collection, cleansing, and enrichment, such that we can look to the variety of sources where that data might reside, whether it's purchase orders or specs or maintenance manuals or engineering documents and drawings, or their existing maintenance system, or perhaps even plant walkdowns. We'll take all those sources of information into a common staging area where we apply our methodology to validate, transform, standardize, deduplicate, and achieve approval of that information to load it into the maintenance system. If we look at this variety of sources, first let's look just at the one you would think to look first into is your existing maintenance system. And in that regard, we work with all of the major EAM environments and build a set of diagnostics that we can use to help you look at the data that's currently in EAM for accuracy, but we can also use it to diagnose the health of your maintenance practices and the maturity of your activities. This is an example of one of 100 or more types of tests that we can make from samples of your EAM data, and it tells us things such as equipment records without serial numbers and the implications of that for your ability to do warranty claim processing. Equipment without criticality indicators can indicate reason for concern with environmental health and safety risk. High percentage of parts not on a bill of material, it indicates you've got obsolete MRO inventory problems. We can look at individual bad actors and look at what equipment are causing excessive amounts of downtime and problems. We can look at how you're closing work orders and allocating cost to those such that you can get good cost accounting. And the list goes on. As I said, we can work with you to tailor a set of analyses to determine just where you are, where the gaps are, what's missing, and what's going on with your maintenance environment, just with a quick workshop to look at what's there today and what needs to be there. Another area that we've had quite a bit of success with clients is looking at unstructured data. Perhaps not the first place you would look to enrich an EAM environment, but Gartner says that roughly 80% of EAM relevant information actually resides in unstructured data sources, such as maintenance manuals, engineering drawings, specs, purchase orders. We've made innovative use of a technology from SAP called Text Data Analytics to build out fuzzy logic search tools to interrogate this unstructured data and mine from it the information that you need for your EAM environment. The technology's been available, but our use of it is a bit unique in that we've configured the business rules, the noun modifiers, and the fuzzy logic to look particularly at the domain of assets, systems, and materials. Here's an example of a use of that tool with just a text description of a glove from a supply chain system. When you look at it, you can see that the three bodies of text there on the left probably do describe a glove, but with the analytics tool, we can say with 78% probability that it's describing the same glove, and then beyond that, we can set up a taxonomy, as you see on the right, and mine from these texts all the information to populate in an orderly fashion the taxonomy. Now, not a big deal if you're just looking at 3 records, but if you're looking at several 100,000, it does become quite a challenge. Here, in fact, is an example. One of our clients, due to an inconvenient contract with their engineering construction company, built a large bit of capital assets, and the best information describing the assets that they had built resided on 200,000 paper purchase orders. And to make it a bit worse, their contract with the EPC precluded them from going back to the vendors to get additional information. So when we encountered them, they had 200,000 paper purchase orders and a big plant ready to start up, and were struggling as to how they might load their maintenance system. Well, we were able to scan those purchase orders and create 200,000 text files, as you see here. We highlighted the areas of interest to us and then structured that data using optical character recognition capabilities from SAP so that we built the 200,000 text files with the data extracted, as you see. Now, very importantly, we kept the linkage, the association, such that we knew which text file came from which purchase order. We then used the Text Data Analytics tool to extract tag numbers, manufacturer model numbers, and attributes, and then normalized and standardized that bit of information. We then used our offshore content engineers and our existing million-plus library of managed materials to enrich that data such that in very short order we were able to go from 200,000 pieces of paper to a structured, deduplicated, enriched set of information that we could then carry forward to the next step in the process, such as creating material masters. So that's an example of what we can do with unstructured data that you might find in a maintenance manual or a purchase order or a specification. Engineering documents and drawings are another typical source that's quite straightforward for us. You might have intelligent documents from perhaps Intergraph or AutoCAD or Aviva or Bentley. Maybe you only have PDFs, but again, the technology exists and we're able to extract that information, interrogate it, structure it, enrich it, and use that again as another ready source of information to build out and enrich an EAM environment. Finally, plant walkdowns are a capability that we provide to fill in the gaps. Once we've looked into your EAM environment, once we've looked to your various information sources, sometimes the information sources don't agree, sometimes there are gaps, sometimes you just need to go validate certain pieces. And we'll deploy the team of experts using handheld technology to build out the structures, agree with you on a business process, such that while our guys are in the field, our team is back in the office with you and doing validation on the fly, such that we can, while our teams are on site, direct them to collect one additional bit of information and ensure that we're making the best use of a field deployed team to fill in the gaps in your asset data. As I said, we're deploying experts in the field that know what they're looking at, that know how to look at a piping and instrumentation diagram and do the walkdowns. We're using mobile devices that are scripted, such that as they walk up to a device, the system says, here are the information elements that we need from that device. We're doing validation on the fly so that we know we're getting just what we need as we do the walkdowns. If you're deploying linear asset management, perhaps on a roadway or a pipeline or transmission distribution environment, geolocation is important, and we'll collect those geo coordinates as a part of that field data collection. And quite often our customers will ask us to apply RFID tags or another source of tagging while we're there and while we know what we're looking at. If it's not already tagged, it's a very convenient time to do that as well. So what we've done in summary is talk about collecting information from your existing EAM environment, from unstructured data sources such as purchase orders and manuals, engineering documents and drawings, and then filling in the gap for field data collection. What we do with that next is enrichment. And in that regard, we have a methodology that's called our 4Cs framework, focusing on cleanse, create, consolidate, classify the information. Perhaps the best way to explain how it works is with an example. A current client, as we began work with them, challenged us. They said, we have a piece of equipment called a palletizer from a manufacturer called Alvi. We've got a model number, a serial number. Perhaps we don't know much else. What can you do with regards to your 4Cs methodology? How do you enrich that data for us? Well, our content engineers took that challenge. We didn't have it in our existing content library, so they went to online sources and quickly came up with the manufacturer's manual for that Alvi palletizer. Since our client didn't give us the framework, we chose ISO 14224 as the framework to determine here's how we'll define success. This is the taxonomy we'll use to fill this out as a means to demonstrate how we do enrichment. Now, you might use 14224, you might use UNSPSC. If you're an oil and gas customer, you might use PIDEX. We support all of the standards. We just encourage you to use one. So in this case, we chose 14224 as the basis, and our customer, it turns out, did give us quite a little pop quiz. This particular one had 1,951 material line items. So we dove in, and as we do this work with our methodology, we always create a unique identifier for each line item in the material list. This allows us to do things like identify an in-feed belt as a line item in one part of the manual. In another part of the manual, we found that in-feed belt has its own list of sub-assemblies. So we're able to track that uniquely during the course of enrichment. If you're an SAP user and you know the SAP load designations, an L designation indicates the lowest level of material, and only those are the ones you use for material master and spares creation. That's all part of what we do building SAP load-ready data. Now, in this case, the Alvi guys called out a Baldor motor as a replacement part. They only used an Alvi part number, But we already had the Baldor catalogs in our MRO content library, so we were able to pull the Baldor catalogs and then put the actual Baldor replacement spares in there so that we were able to remove the dependency on the ALV part numbers for replacement spares. Then as we get to standardization, it's a good example of why standards matter. SAP has a long text description for every material line item. When you imply a standard, such as 14224 or UNSPSC, it defines a particular order, noun, modifier, attribute in a certain order, and we use that through an automated means to build out that long text description such that it's always described the same and enables you to have a complete description without duplication as we're building this information out. Now, enrichment means even more than the standardization. Here's an example of a solenoid valve that ALV provided. It has an ALV part number and a brief description. Here's the enriched version of that description, again built out to the standards from our content library as we looked out to content library and online sources. As you see, ALV left out a few minor things like the power requirements and the in-fitting connections. We build that out completely, which allows you to do true vendor-independent material sourcing as you're looking at spares allocation. So there's just a real quick summary of what we do and how we do it to help customers get from wherever they are, perhaps incomplete information in their EAM environment, but data in documents, drawings, data in other online sources, data in their engineering environments, and even walkdowns to pull all the data together, then to do the validation, transformation, standardization, that's hard to say, deduplication, and then carry it through the approval process to ensure that you get right, accurate, complete, enriched data into your EAM environment. Well, that's a lot to talk about in short order, and Southern guys weren't really designed to talk fast, so I'm not sure if all of that even made sense. But perhaps we can open the floor for questions, Terry, to see if there are any things that didn't make sense or anything I need to elaborate on.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mike. The floor is now open for any questions you might have. If you could please enter them into the question pane located on the right-hand side of your window, and we'll see what's coming in. You know, Mike, we've got two. While you were talking, I'm going to kind of combine them because they're similar, so my apologies to attendees, but I think they'll agree this was similar. We had a couple questions that related to what kind of things need to be considered when you're building a business case to kind of fight to the higher-ups that that asset data needs to be improved over what it currently is. So can you address how that is approached?
Sure. It's a good question. And well, I guess there are a number of scenarios. One is in capital projects. Quite often as clients are building new capital assets, one of the big hurdles for startup is getting the information from the various documents and drawings that come from their EPCs into their EAM environment. It's essential for operational readiness. It's essential for safe startup. It's essential to ramp up to full production capacity. Quite often it gets overlooked, and that's one of the areas where we work to engage early with our clients in the capital production process. Another is in all of the change that occurs during a turnaround or a shutdown. The annual or biannual maintenance activities will do an awful lot of change, sometimes including brownfield capital projects and modifications to the plant. This management of change activity generates a lot of change that needs to be rolled back into the EAM environment. And we're working with our customers to establish the master data governance capabilities that would allow them to take the information as they do work order closeouts, as they do handovers at the end of a turnover, and initiate the management of change process that does the build out from there. Other situations we encounter are customers looking for regulatory compliance or just safety issues. We've had customers say, we don't even need to discuss a business case. If you can do the things that you describe and keep us out of the newspapers, it's worth the value there, just because we need to be able to demonstrate that the information in our operating systems is the same as the information in our plants.
Mike, so I think you addressed this a little bit already, but can you speak to when it's best to address the data, especially when you're considering a new addition to a plant or before you start construction on a plant? Is there a time period as you're planning that where it's best to look at asset data?
Sure, great question. The best answer, if you can get up front, is to talk about it at the time of defining a contract with your engineering construction company. We've seen situations where there are 3 stacks of manuals describing the plant to be built and 3 pages describing the information to be handed over afterwards. And it can be as simple an error as saying, we want all digital data in information handover. Well, that sounds great, but it could be just a whole bunch of PDFs, which are next to useless for interrogation purposes. So if you can get in early, we can help you define a contract that will make everything downstream a lot simpler. Next best answer is if we're involved with you to consider the information issues very early on, as early as front-end engineering design, we can build the environment with you that begins taking transmittals and building out all of the long lead planning, such that you can begin building your EAM environments, defining spares, looking at all of the long lead activity, and do all of that work prior to startup, which it seems so logical. Frankly, it most often, as we know, it just doesn't happen that way. So the earlier the better, because there's so much that can happen effectively in your maintenance and reliability organizations if you give them a head start.
Fair enough. Well, it looks like that is all of the questions that we have. I'm kind of hanging on in case somebody has a last-minute one, but no, it looks like that's all the questions we've got for today, Mike. So I'd like to thank you for joining us for today's session, Mike, and leading us through a great bit of information. And to all of you who took time out of your busy schedules today, we thank you as well. We know you can't get enough hours in a day these days. If there's a topic that you'd like to see us cover in the future, or an area that your organization is struggling with around data, please let us know. We're happy to address it via webinar in the future. And if you'd like to learn more about Utopia, you can do that through our website at www.utopiainc.com. So like I said, feel free to email us any suggestions for future topics. We look forward to you guys joining us for our next webinar, and thanks again. Have a great day.